Completely wrong history facts you still believe.
Sparta's babies.
Let's see.
Ancient Sparta, a small but powerful state in southern Greece, is known as one of history's most brutal warrior societies.
Yep.
Spartan leaders would check every newborn baby for signs of weakness, and
Really?
those who didn't pass were thrown off the cliffs of Mount Tagetus to their deaths. Only the strongest were allowed to grow up. Plutarch,
That's
a
crazy.
Roman historian who wrote about Spartan life roughly 600 years after Sparta's peak, is the only ancient writer who mentions this. No other source backs him up.
Really?
And when researchers dug around the bottom of Mount Taygetus looking
No
for proof,
bodies.
they found a few adult bones but not a single child.
Yep.
Sparta was tough on its people. Training was strict, and military life started young, but none of that means they were throwing babies off cliffs. Plutarch was most likely
They were looking for weaknesses inside babies? What would you even look for?
making it up, and by the time anyone read it, the Spartans were long gone and couldn't set the record straight. Nero's fiddle. Nero took power in Rome at
Nero.
16 and held it for nearly 14 years. In
Jesus.
64 AD, a massive fire broke out in the city and lasted 9 days, burning down 10 of its 14 districts. Nero
Damn.
supposedly started it because he wanted to rebuild Rome his way, and then played the fiddle while the city burned around him. But the fiddle wouldn't be invented for another 900 years. And
That's
Tacitus,
crazy.
one of Rome's best-known historians, wrote that Nero wasn't even in the city when the blaze started. He was in Antium, a coastal town several miles away. When he heard what was happening, he rushed back and opened his private gardens as shelters. He
That's
paid for
crazy.
aid out of his own pocket. There is no proof Nero had
So someone lied about him playing his fiddle while his city was burning down. That's the crazy shit.
anything to do with it. He had blamed Christians for what happened and punished them for it, so Christian writers had every reason to turn on him. His rivals did the same. Every major account of his life was written
That's
by people
crazy.
who hated him. The pyramids. The Great Pyramids of Giza are some of the oldest buildings
Spoiler alert, they were built by aliens.
on Earth. They were supposedly built by slaves, often said to be Israelite prisoners, forced to work under brutal conditions. Then, in the late 1980s, Mark Lehner from Harvard and Egyptian researcher Zahi Hawass found a village near the
Jesus.
pyramids where the builders had lived. Inside were houses, bakeries, and even breweries. Some of them had broken bones that had healed well, meaning someone was looking after them. The food was good too, mostly
Yeah,
bread and meat. These were not slaves. They were paid.
I mean, normally you want to take care of your slaves decently, right? Maybe they did different back then, but yeah, that doesn't look like slavery.
Some were skilled builders who worked year-round. Others were farmers who came in during the summer floods when they couldn't work their fields. It was
That's
how they
crazy.
paid their taxes. This was how things worked in ancient Egypt for over 1,000 years. In 1170 BC, the men building a tomb for Pharaoh Rameses III stopped because they hadn't been paid. They marched to the temples and made their demands.
That's
They
crazy.
won. It's the oldest labor strike in history. The gladiators. Roman gladiators are some of the most famous fighters in history. Two men walked into the arena
What is this? This is the completely wrong history facts you probably still believe.
and only one walked out alive. That's how it supposedly worked. But these fighters were expensive. Training them took
Really?
years, and they had special diets and personal doctors. Killing one off every fight made no sense when replacing them cost that much. The Colosseum was active for over 400 years. Rome would have run out of them fast. So fights had referees. They were usually retired
That's
gladiators,
crazy.
and their job was to step in before things went too far. There were about 30 different types, each fighting in their own way. Bones
Like the UFC today. That's
dug up
crazy.
from a burial site in Ephesus, modern-day Turkey, show healed wounds and signs of surgery. These men were being looked after. Some did still die, usually from bleeding out after a match was already over. And yet plenty signed up on their own, looking for fame and money. Even the hand gestures are wrong. Most people think thumbs up meant a gladiator was spared, and thumbs down meant he was killed. Ancient Roman writers never
Interesting.
said which way the thumb pointed. What they do say is that a stretched out thumb meant death because it looked like a sword being drawn. When the crowd wanted to spare a fighter, they tucked their
Oh.
thumbs inside their fists, like a sword being put away. The version everyone knows today came from a painting called Paulus Verso by French artist Jean-Léon Gérôme in
Oh, they have thumbs. Interesting.
1872. It became so famous that director Ridley Scott used it as one of his main references when making the film
Ridley
Gladiator
Scott.
in 2000. The Great Depression. In October 1929, the US stock market crashed.
Yep.
Most people were taught that this caused the Great Depression, the worst economic disaster of the 20th century. It didn't. The economy was
Really?
already falling apart. American factories were making more goods than people could buy. At the same time, Banks were lending to
Mm.
almost anyone, so people were spending what they didn't have. The
It was already heading that direction, so the Great Depression just sparked it.
US had also put heavy taxes on goods coming in from other countries, and those countries did the same back. Trade slowed down. When companies couldn't sell what they were making, they collapsed. The banks that had backed them failed right after.
Well, that's
There
usually
was
how that
no
goes for any
protection on what people
companies.
had saved. So when a bank went down, everyone who kept their savings there lost everything.
That's
Panic
crazy.
spread.
That's
People
crazy.
rushed to empty their accounts before the next one fell, which only made
Imagine, like, you have $1,000,000 in the bank and the bank collapsed. They just keep your money. That's crazy.
things worse. By the time the stock market collapsed, the economy had already been broken for months. The crash just made it impossible to ignore. The Depression lasted over a decade and didn't end until World War II created enough jobs to pull the
Jesus.
country out in 1941.
Yeah, because we're a company that thrives when wars happen. It's just how it is.
The Salem Witch Trials. In 1692, the town of Salem in
What could be wrong about the Salem witch trials?
Massachusetts accused over 200 people of witchcraft.
Yeah.
Most people believed they were burned at the stake. None of them were. Burning was how they did
Really?
it in Europe, not in Salem. They hanged 19 people. One man was pressed to death, and at least 5 more died in the filthy jails while awaiting
That's
trial.
crazy.
It wasn't just
What
women
about
either.
drowning? Did anyone
About 1
drown?
in 4 of the dead were men, and even 2 dogs were killed. The most well-known death was Giles Corey, an 81-year-old farmer. He wouldn't enter a plea because if he did, guilty or not guilty, the court could take his property from his family. They pinned him to the ground under
Well, I don't know if, like, if this is true or not, but there's one Salem witch trial that I heard about. I don't know if it was Salem witch trial, but one witch trial that I heard about was, like, they would test if you could not drown. If you drowned, you weren't a witch. If you didn't drown, you if you drowned, you weren't a witch. If you didn't drown, you were a witch.
a wooden board and started piling heavy stones on top to get him to talk. This went on for 3 days. Every time they
What?
asked, he gave the same answer: more weight. He died on the 3rd day. He
Or
never broke.
wait.
His family kept their land.
Am I a witch?
Tutankhamun's
You'll
curse.
never find out.
In 1922, a British team led by Howard Carter opened the tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun in
Didn't they
Egypt.
all die?
It was one of the biggest finds in history. The first person to die was Lord Carnarvon, the
Yeah.
man who had paid for the whole thing. A mosquito bit him on the cheek and he nicked the bite while shaving. The cut got infected and he
Ooh.
died of blood poisoning 4 months later. He was 56. Journalists took his death and turned it into a story about a curse,
Yep.
claiming that a warning had been written
The
inside the tomb.
curse.
No such warning existed.
Oh,
But
I remember about the warning thing. I thought they all died.
the story sold papers, so they kept printing it. Carter, who actually found the tomb and spent the most time inside it, lived for another 17 years. Of the 58 people who were there at the opening,
Only
only
one
8
died.
died within the
8.
next 12 years, and they died of everything from cancer to
They should have killed them all off. Just to keep it going, just kill them all off.
natural causes. The curse was never real. It was made up to sell papers. Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus is
Really?
often said to have proven the earth was round and to have discovered America. He did neither. People
Yeah, I
had
knew that
known
was
the
true.
earth was
Wasn't
round
true.
for over 2,000 years before he was born. Greek scholars had proven it and even measured the distance around the planet, getting it
Dude,
99%
okay.
right.
So they knew this. They knew the earth was round. You know, that just goes to show how dumb people are nowadays. Some people think the earth is flat,
It was taught in schools across Europe. When Columbus pitched
which
his
is
voyage,
crazy, dude.
nobody told him the world was flat.
Oh, the earth is flat. We've never been to the moon.
They told him it was too big. He
But
had mixed
aliens
up
are
2
real!
different
I'm
types of
kidding.
miles in his math, which made the trip look much shorter than it really was. The critics were right. Columbus was wrong. He only made it because he ran into a continent that nobody in Europe knew about, and he wasn't even the first European to get there. Norse Vikings had already built a settlement in Newfoundland,
Yeah,
Canada,
he was
around
like
1021 AD. That's over 400 years earlier.
yeah,
The site,
he was
known as
super
Lonso
late.
Meadows, was found in the 1960s by Norwegian explorers Helge and Anne Stein Ingstad, with Norse buildings,
Inkstad.
workshops, and a blacksmith shop still in the ground. Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon Bonaparte is probably the
Bonaparte.
most famous short man in history. There's even a term for it, the Napoleon complex, used to describe short people who act aggressive to make up for their height. He
That's
supposedly
crazy.
stood around 5 feet 2 inches, a leader so small that his generals towered over him, but that was not true. He was about 5 feet 7 inches.
That's not
That
bad.
was average for a Frenchman at the time. The mix-up came from the measurement system. France used different units than England, and a French inch
Imagine.
was longer than an English one. So when his height was written down in those units, it looked like 5 feet 2 inches to anyone reading it in English. Britain was at war with France, so the mistake was
You're,
useful.
you're taller than I thought.
A British cartoonist named James Gilray drew him over and over as a tiny, angry man he called Little Boney. The drawing spread across
Little
the country,
bony.
and that became how most people pictured him for generations. Napoleon was also the one who brought the metric system to France, trying to
That's
stop the
crazy.
kind of confusion that would later be used against him. The
Bro was so like so pressed about this. He made a new measuring system. Well, not new, but you know what I mean.
Aztecs. When Spanish explorer Hernan Cortes arrived in Mexico in 1519, the Aztec Emperor Moctezuma supposedly thought he was Quetzalcoatl, one of the Aztec gods,
Who?
come back to take
What?
his throne. The story says the Aztecs handed over their empire because they believed it. That version was written after the war. Most of it came from people on the Spanish side who wanted to make the Aztecs look weak. The earliest records say otherwise. When Moctezuma met Cortes,
Dude, okay, so imagine you go to like an ancient tribe somewhere and they're like, "Oh, you look like this god that we worship. You're him. You can have all of our things, our women, our our gold, or you're like, would you agree? Would you be like, yeah, I'm that guy?
for the first time. He told him something along the lines of, I know you are flesh and blood like me. That's not how you greet a god. The real reasons the empire fell are simpler. The Aztecs had been bullying the smaller groups around them for years, taking their food and forcing them to work. Those groups hated them. Cortes saw that and used it. Tens of thousands of local fighters joined him. The Spanish also brought smallpox. Nobody there
Oh
had ever been
Jesus!
sick with it before, so it spread fast and killed huge numbers. On top of all that, the Spanish had guns and horses, things no one there had ever seen. Albert Einstein.
Oh
Albert
shit! What?
Einstein supposedly failed math as a kid. It's one of the most repeated facts about
That's
him,
not true.
usually shared as proof that even geniuses struggle in school. He didn't. He was excellent at it. By the time he
Yeah,
was 15, he had already taught himself calculus, a type of advanced math that
bro was like dumb smart. What the fuck?
most people don't learn until university. His school records still exist and show top marks in every subject. When he
Who the
took the
fuck
entrance
made it up?
exam for one of Switzerland's top science schools at 16, the math and science sections were easy for him. He didn't get in because he fell short on language and history.
GG,
He was also 2 years younger than the
GG, GG.
other students, so he hadn't covered as much material yet. The myth goes back to Switzerland's grading system. A 6 used to be the lowest mark, then it became the
Oh,
highest. Someone read his old grades without knowing that, and assumed he had been a bad student. The story stuck because people liked it. A genius who struggled as a student is a better story than one who was good at everything from the start. The
yeah,
Vikings. Vikings are almost
the
always shown
underdog
wearing
story.
helmets with horns on them. It's one of the most recognizable images in history. There is no
Oh yeah.
evidence they ever wore them. Not a single horned
Oh,
helmet has been found at any Viking.
that's crazy, dude. Any picture or anything that you ever look up about Vikings? Nah, not even the Vikings in the shows that I'm looking at wear fucking horned helmets. Yeah, they do. That guy's wearing horns. That guy's wearing horns. What?
Site. The ones that have been dug up are plain and rounded, built to protect the head and nothing else. Horns would be a terrible idea in a fight because they give your enemy something to grab onto,
Oh yeah,
and
that'd be
any
fucking
hard hit from the
terrible.
side would snap them off or knock the whole thing loose. The image came from a costume designer named Karl Emil Dupler.
Unless
In
you run at him.
1876, he was hired to design the outfits for an opera by German composer Richard Wagner. He put horns on the Viking characters because he thought it looked dramatic. The opera became one of the most popular in the world, and
That's
for
true.
most people, it was the first time they had ever seen Vikings on stage. The look spread from there. Within a few decades, painters and writers were copying it too. Horned headpieces from
I mean, it looks cool. It looks cool. When you think of Vikings, you think of like the horns, the helmets, the axes, the big dude wearing like a fur coat.
Scandinavia do exist. They date back to around 900 BC, over 1,000 years before the Viking Age even started, and were most likely worn during rituals.
That's
Grigory
crazy.
Rasputin. Grigory Rasputin was a Russian mystic who became close to the royal family in the early
I've
1900s
never heard of this
by
guy.
claiming he could heal the Tsar's sick son. The story of his death is one of the
What?
wildest in history. They supposedly poisoned him with enough cyanide to kill 5 men, and he kept eating. Then they shot him in
What?
the chest and walked away, only for him to get back up. After that,
What?
he was shot again and beaten, then thrown into a freezing river where he tried to claw his way out from under the ice. None of that.
That is the story they told and they believed it? Shot twice, enough cyanide to kill 5 people, and thrown in a frozen river and lived. What?
Holds up. When doctors examined the body, they found a single bullet wound to the head at close range. There was no poison in his system and no water in his lungs, meaning he was dead before he hit the river. The whole thing was made up by the man who killed him, a nobleman named Felix Yusupov. He spent years retelling it in interviews and books,
Really?
making it bigger each time, because that's what sold. Nobody wanted to hear that
Yep.
Rasputin just
That's what I was talking about earlier. It's all a big money scam. They exaggerate the stories so it sells.
got shot and died. The Trojan Horse. The
Trojan Horse.
Greeks could
Dude, they all got in the horse and they left it as a gift and they accepted it. And then they raided it. That's how I remember it.
couldn't break through the walls of Troy after 10 years of war, so they built a giant wooden horse and hid soldiers inside. They left it at the gates
That seems unbelievable though for the time. Really think about it.
as a gift. The Trojans brought it in. That night, the soldiers climbed out and opened the gates from the inside. There's no proof it happened. The story comes
What?
from Homer, a Greek poet who wrote it down hundreds of years after Troy would have existed.
Is
No
that
other
true?
source from that time mentions it. Some historians think the horse was actually a battering ram.
It's not true.
It could also be about earthquakes. The Greek god Poseidon controlled both horses and the shaking of the earth, so a wooden horse might have just been an old way of saying the walls came down on their own. The city itself is real. In the 1870s, a German
That's
businessman named
crazy.
Heinrich Schliemann went looking for it and found it in northwestern Turkey. He used dynamite to blast through the ground, wrecking layers of history on the way down. Underneath, he
That's
found 9
crazy, dude.
separate cities, built on top of each other over thousands of years. If you'd like to see more stories like this, make sure to
What? Oh!
subscribe and
Jesus, man. I didn't think that, dude, the Trojan horse is the one that shocked me the most. I didn't think, like, I thought it was true. Like, they made a giant horse and they busted in the wall. I guess not.